On Christmas Eve in 1938, 6-year-old Teddy and 7-year-old Doyle Wilburn made their show business debut on a street corner in Thayer, Missouri. Along with their 2 brothers and a sister, they became known as the Singing Wilburn Children and performed shows at schools and churches throughout the Midwest. Then one day in 1940, Roy Acuff saw them and was so impressed, he took them to the Grand Ole Opry. A few years later, they became regulars on the Louisiana Hayride. When the Korean conflict erupted in 1951, Doyle and Teddy left the group to join the service. When they later resumed their show business career, it was as a duo. The Wilburn Brothers became regulars on the Webb Pierce Show, and in 1953 returned to the Grand Ole Opry. In the following decade, Doyle and Teddy became stars of their own syndicated TV show and recorded several hit singles on the Decca label. That was the Wilburn Brothers as they appeared in 1956. Last September, we spoke to the Wilburns following their last special concert at the Grand Ole Opry. A short time after our interview, Doyle Wilburn died of cancer. And here are the Wilburn Brothers to tell us how they got started in show business.
As a family group, 5 children, there was 4 brothers and a sister, playing on street corners for tip money. And a 10-cent piece and tip money back in those days looked as big as a half a dollar does.
Well, what kind of shows did the Singing Wilburn children perform in the beginning? And how far did you travel to the shows?
We worked one-room schoolhouses and dirt floor theaters back in those days, the late 30s and the early 40s. And continued on working one-room schoolhouses up until right in the late 40s.
That's right, yeah.
So,
did you get to keep any of the money for yourself?
Well, once in a while there'd be a nickel or a dime get stuck in the corner of our little old patched overalls. We'd find it if we found a red soda pop somewhere.
During that era, by grannies, if you had any money, it went to the whole family.
It went right on the table, that's right.
Yeah.
We all worked together as a group. Mama would stay home and have us hot soup in the wintertime when we come back from working, and our daddy done all the driving and acted as our agent and our manager and our promoter.
Ticket seller.
Ticket seller. He done a little bit of everything, but he would never pass the hat. He would never ask anybody for anything.
Teddy, I bet you can remember some funny things that happened during the time that you were working with the Wilburn children. Any particular incident stand out in your mind?
Not any in particular. There were so many of them, Archie, that I've even threatened to sit down and put it all in a book someday.
Yeah, it would be good.
But there were all kinds of things happened. For instance, when we were up in, I believe, Iowa one time, the child labor law was very strict back then. And someone with that organization saw us perform on a street corner. And about the same time, someone else had also become interested in us and wanted to sponsor us by Dr. Pepper. And they told our dad that if he took up their proposition, that they would put him in jail and put us in, spread us around in different homes and see that we were taken care of.
Really?
Really, absolutely.
Golly, that's the child labor law.
Right.
Now, wasn't it Roy Acuff that gave you your first big break?
Yes, really. Yeah. Roy brought us here in 1940. We had been doing a little radio show in Decatur, Alabama, and we had left Decatur to go to Birmingham, where Roy was holding a concert as well as a talent contest in connection. We had 3 flat tires on the way, and back then you had to take out the old inner tubes and put a cold patch on them and then put them back in there and then pump them up with one of those hand pumps. And by the time we got there, it was too late to enter the contest. So Dad took the 5 of us kids and stood us at the backstage entrance to the old auditorium down there in Birmingham, thinking that Roy would come out after the first performance and probably go have something to eat. And when Roy came out, he had us start singing Farther Along. And Roy stood there with tears in his eyes and watched us do the song. Started talking to Dad afterwards, and before we knew it, we'd gotten a telegram from the Grand Ole Opry asking us to come up for an audition. And we passed that audition, and we were here 6 months. And then the child labor law interfered again.
Here?
The child labor law put so much pressure on the officials here at WSM and the Grand Ole Opry that they said you're going to have to get rid of them or we're going to lock your doors. So we were here as regular members for 6 months.
Now, we know, of course, you were real young at the time, but when you returned to Nashville in the 1950s, how did you get back into the music business?
Well, the President of the United States had drafted us into the Korean War.
Yeah.
And after we won the Korean War...
You and Teddy.
No, seriously, I was in 8 months ahead of Teddy, which naturally I was discharged from service after Teddy. We incidentally met up in Korea. He was just getting there, and I was coming home.
You and Teddy?
Yes, right.
Well, I'll be there then.
So Teddy told me that Webb Pierce was waiting for me to come home, that he was about the biggest thing in country music at that time on record, and he was waiting for me to come home to organize his road show. So when I got home, I went to work, hired the musicians, and hired the staff to put together a show for Webb on the road, and I emceed the show and done Rube comedy.
Man.
Which I started doing Rube comedy back when I was 10 years old. So
How did you dress for that?
Oh, in the big breeches and little red hat and red shirt and black my teeth out in front.
And the red
Freckles.
suspenders.
And, yeah, the big suspenders and all. And
That's the way they used to do
oh,
it.
yes, I copied everybody. Everything I do on stage today, I stole from somebody.
Just, I'll give you two questions here. Doyle, you all can split them up here.
All right.
And tell me about your contract with Decca, and what was the first song you recorded?
First song we recorded, Teddy copied off of a jukebox in Toronto, Canada, where we was doing 4 shows a day at the Casino Theater, and a little coffee shop next door had a little jukebox with 10 records on it. One of them, a song was called If You Love Me, Really Love Me. And he would play that record over and over and over and over, and we learned the melody from that jukebox, and he copied the lyric down, and that was our first recording for Decca Records.
And we performed that on the Arthur Godfrey show, and when Doyle was asked by Arthur about the song, he said K-Star recorded it in the pop field and we recorded it in the cornfield.
I know, of course, you're not only involved in recording, but many other facets of the music business. Now, how did you get into publishing and management and things like that?
Well, we didn't have any money to promote our records.
Yeah.
So we thought maybe a copyright on a song would work 24 hours a day for us, which we couldn't stay up and work 24 hours a day. We'd have to lay down and get some rest, but that copyright might earn enough money to get us a postage stamp. Come in to mail a record out or something of that sort. So that's really what started us in the publishing business.
Yeah. I remember Troubles Back in Town was the #1 record in 1962.
62.
In Cashbox.
Right.
We'll be right back after this. Greatest men in the business, and probably one of the biggest influential people in the business on the younger people. And he was one of these guys that got into some pretty fancy scrapes when he was young. Do you remember any of those?
Oh, yes. Roy, back in well, it was really the early radio days for country artists. You'd work on a little 250-watt radio station, which then got out like a 50,000-watt station does today. But you always receive, when you go out and announce your personal appearances, when you go out to these little one-room schools that we talked about earlier, to do a show, you would always get invitations from people that lived in that district to come and have dinner with them.
Always.
Well, Roy and Smoky Mountain Boys and Rachel made up a pretty good group of people, you know, back in the days when you looked for hamburgers 2 for a nickel sign. So most of us always accepted an invitation to someone's house for dinner. So Roy accepted a dinner invitation one time and got way back out in the country in the hills of East Tennessee and finally found this house. And this lady, a little on the heavy side, about 200 pounds, come out from behind the house and started waddling down to the car. Meantime, Roy and a couple of the boys got out of the car, and she recognized Roy immediately and said, "Mr. Acuff, I'm Miss So-and-so. I'm the one that invited you to come, you and the Smoky Mountain Boys, to come over for dinner." Said, "Sure." Well, back then it was supper.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Especially with country people. They invite you here for supper. And meantime, Roy noticed that she indulged in the snuff. And the snuff was oozing out each corner of her mouth and coming down here and dripping off her chin. So Roy decided right then that he wasn't going to eat. So he said, Miss Johnson, whatever her name was, said, I certainly appreciate your invitation, but said, the boys and I got awfully hungry before we got here, and we stopped back a few miles at the restaurant and had a sandwich and everything. We're just not hungry at this point, but we did feel obligated to come and personally thank you for inviting us out here for dinner, but I will have a drink of that cold well water back there. She said, well, you're certainly welcome to it, and I understand everything. So she and Roy walked over to the well, and Roy let the old bucket down and got him a fresh bucket of water and pulled it back up and set it down, reached up and got the dipper. There was an old gourd dipper hanging there. Got him a big dipper full of water, and he started to take the drink, and he thought of that snuff, and he twisted the handle around like that, and he drank from this position out of the end of the dipper. And when he hung the dipper back up, the lady said to him, said, Mr. Acuff, said, you're the only person I've ever seen in my life that drinks water out of that dipper the same way I do.